Greetings viewers, and welcome to my Warhammer 40K Advanced Techniques series. In this video I'm going to go ahead and jump right into magnetizing your models. As you can see in front of you, I've got a couple different varieties and sizes of magnets. They're all from the same company, from Magcraft. I'll put a link to their website in the section below so you guys can check them out. A lot of people use magnets for different things. A lot of places follow what you see is what you get rules, or in general, as the modelers for our army, we generally want to see our models equipped with the gear that they're supposed to have per the army list we've set up for the game we're playing. So it makes it a little bit easier to swap out weapon options rather than trying to mentally remember every single piece of war gear that somebody has, whether it's a melt-a-gun, a flamer, plasma gun, whatever. It makes it much easier if it's actually on the model and you can see it rather than having to try to remember who was what and which guy had what equipment. So that's definitely one useful technique for applying magnets to your models. Another one, such as, let's say, a dreadnought or the defiler I'm going to show you, you can use the magnets to attach all the different weapon combinations available, not only necessarily just to show what they're equipped with, but also if it's, again, such as a vehicle, if that weapon is destroyed during combat, it makes it easy to just go ahead and pluck it off and set it aside so you can visually see that weapon's not there and remember, rather than, again, trying to have to remember simply from memory what was where and who lost what, or perhaps stacking dice on top of the models to represent, again, a weapon's destroyed or whatever the case may be with that particular model. Some other options include things such as, let's say, Blood Angels Assault Marines, where they have the big backpacks on, or other maybe models have giant wings and stuff on them. It makes it much easier for transport to go ahead and be able to remove those things and maybe set them aside in a different compartment or put them in a bag or something else aside from the model, rather than trying to jam a gigantic, whether it's good looking or not is one thing, but if you can't get it to where you're trying to go safely and efficiently, it kind of takes away the purpose of having, again, something with all this extra gear and cool looking stuff on it. It just makes it a big pain in the butt to haul around. Another thing you can use your magnets for is to actually pose your models, or kind of magnetize the parts to kind of get them out of your way for painting, because perhaps maybe the piece that you're magnetizing on there, be it an arm or a weapon system on the model, may block actual areas that you need to get to paint effectively on your model. So you can kind of use the magnets again on some troops to maybe be able to pose them how you want if you're into all that and you want to take the extra time to do so. Or again, just to kind of be able to pull that part off and paint it and then just stick it on later, and again use it as perhaps a different warrior option at the same time. So it'll definitely serve multiple purposes. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into each of the different magnet types I have, and then I'll go through each one of their uses and some tips and tricks on how to get them to work for you and use them effectively when assembling and magnetizing your army. So again, I've got 4 different varieties in front of you. On this side I'm going to go smallest to largest. Again, the company is Magcraft. They come in these dual-walled containers just to kind of keep them from grabbing everything on your desk. So I'll go over how to open it. You pop the first top off, and when you open it up, you have this little cylinder in here with these 2 end caps, and you just pull the end cap off, and then out come your magnets. You take what you need, put them back in there. Again, this is just to keep them from grabbing everything and sliding around on your desk, trying to grab anything that might be magnetic. These particular ones are the smallest ones that I use. They come in 200 when you purchase this particular packaging of them. This is the diameter and thickness and the part number for those of you who may be interested. When using these magnets, you're going to need a 1/16 inch drill bit to actually drill the hole to fit them in. And again, I'm going to go over basically the only thing I use these for, because they are so small. They don't really hold a lot of weight, which is one of the things you've got to take into consideration when you're using magnets. If you use a magnet that's too small for the part that you're attaching, it's either, number one, not going to stick at all, or number two, it's not going to hold very well. So anytime you touch the model or even bump the table, parts are going to start falling off, and it's going to kind of be more of a headache than it's worth when it comes to actually magnetizing your model. So first thing you need to keep in mind is the size of the magnet you're using, based on obviously the area it's going to be applied to, and again, how strong that magnet is versus what it's going to be holding. So again, this size magnet, what I'll use this for is actually for attaching weapons such as melt-a-guns, bolters, flamers, all that stuff on these guys. So I've got my little flamer here. As you can see here at the base is where I've actually applied the magnet up here at the top. And then again, see, this is magnetized. And then in the guy's actual hand here is where I put the other magnet. Some people that do this actually put a second magnet here in this hand, and then apply it somewhere along the fore end of the weapon here so that it has 2 magnets holding it. I don't typically do that because I can't seem to get all my guys with this two-armed pose in the same exact position every time, and some of the arms are actually different. Unless you use the exact same set of arms on every single one of your guys in this pose, they are actually going to be spaced and kind of held a little bit differently, and then again the arms have to be stuck on there exactly right for that same gun to fit in everybody's hand. Otherwise the magnet may be a little too far forward, a little too far back, and it might not hold right, and then you've kind of defeated the purpose of using the magnet. So I'll apply one magnet again in the hand here and one in the base of the weapon. That's the flamer, and this is the melt-a-gun he was just holding. Put the magnet generally in the same spot. So when I go to equip my guy with it, I just kind of throw it in his hand and it sticks. I mean, I can shake this guy, turn him upside down, shake it, it's not falling out of his hand. So, and then let's say I again equip him with a flamer, I just kind of toss that in his hand, it's already magnetized, and he's holding on to it again. So now during gameplay I can say, well, that's my flamer guy, because obviously he's holding a flamer. So that's definitely, again, a good use for it, and again, like I said, using the right magnet for the right job. Obviously the area on the gun and in the hand is very small, so you're not really going to be able to use anything much bigger than this size magnet for that. And because it is such a small little light part, it's not like you have to worry about too much in terms of the magnet not being able to hold the weight. Now, if you have some of the metal melt-a-guns, it may be a little heavy. I do have some of those and they do seem to work well, but they are less likely to stay in the hand. So if I were to turn them upside down and shake them, it would fall out because that part is, again, heavier than this little plastic piece. So if you can collect the plastic ones, then more power to you, and go ahead and use those as my recommendation. If you do need the extra magnetization on there because it is metal, you can put the magnet in the forend and put another magnet in the hand. Just make sure you're very careful lining it up before you actually stick it in the model's hand. That way you know it's going to fit and stay where it's supposed to go. So another issue that you can kind of come up with when running into applying the magnets and having parts stick to your models, you need to consider the actual polarity of the magnets. Whatever you're using the purpose for in your army, the very first magnet you stick on your very first model that you're doing this with, it doesn't matter which north or south, and they're not marked on the actual magnets. They're smooth on both sides, so you just kind of figure it out from using it. So once you, let's say this is the very first thing I was ever magnetizing in my army, and I stuck this magnet inside the hand, I'd need to be very careful that I put the opposite side magnet facing outward here, because otherwise, if it's, let's say they're both the north pole of the magnet, when I go to put this on here, it's not going to hold. It's actually going to push away, and you're not going to get this to stick in the hand. So you need to be very careful and pay a lot of attention to that, and you can kind of, again, base it off of your very first magnet that you put in, or again, for this size. So all my troops, you definitely want them to be the same, because if this guy is different than another one, he may hold it. I go to put it in another guy's hand for another game later on, I don't have the mark to know who gets what gun, it's not going to stick. So be very careful when doing that. Typically what I do and what I recommend is actually, let's say again, I've put that magnet in his hand for the very first time, and I need to make sure I get the right pole of the magnet sticking out on this side. I'll take the magnet before I even stick it in the weapon, and I'll stick it onto this actual piece so that I know it's holding and I know which side is what. Then what I'll do is I'll actually take a Sharpie marker and I'll mark the top of that magnet so that I have the black side facing outward, which is, I'll know that that black side needs to go in to this weapon here. So I should, when I stick the magnet in here, I shouldn't see the black part, otherwise it's flipped over somehow if I dropped it, or it decided, however, whatever it was going to do, it didn't go in the proper way. I'll know, and I can fix it before the glue dries in there, and I kind of screw myself. So again, I'll mark the top of that second magnet that's stuck on the top here, so I'll know which side goes where, drill my hole for the magnet, apply the glue, make sure that black side from the Sharpie goes in. Then I'll know that this is going to work. And then every time I do a magnet after that, I'll continue to base it off of this guy. So then let's say I go to drill the hole for the next guy. What I'll do is I'll actually take the gun and do the same thing. I'll take my loose magnet, stick it on there. The side that's sticking out, I'll mark it with the Sharpie marker. When I go to apply the magnet to the other troop's hand, I drill my hole, turn it over so that the black side from the marker goes down into the hand, and again, everything is symmetrical basically, and all my guns will fit in all of my troops' hands. Because if you don't do that right, again, you're going to run into some trouble, and you're going to be kicking yourself later, because it's pretty much impossible once you glue that magnet in there to get it back out without destroying the model, and you're going to have to redo your paint job and whatever else you do afterwards. That's again why I usually do this before I even prime the model, so that everything gets covered up with the paint and it gets settled beforehand rather than kind of having to go backwards and redo everything. So that's the use I use for these small ones, and just again the pointer I use for the Sharpie as far as marking your magnets and making sure you get the polarity right. The next size magnets that I use, these two are the same exact diameter, except the ones here are a little bit thicker. They're just over double the thickness of these. I actually ended up ordering these by accident one day. I didn't pay attention to the thickness. I got them. I was kind of upset. But then this is actually the second tube of these magnets I've purchased because I like them so much. Because they are thicker, they actually hold a little bit more weight, which goes back to the whole issue I mentioned of making sure you have the right magnet for the right job. If the parts you're doing are a little bit heavier or you don't have a strong enough magnet, things are going to start falling off, and it's going to be more aggravation than it's worth to actually magnetize your parts. So this first one here, again, these are the thicker ones. They are 0.125 inches in diameter, 0.063 inches thick, and there's the part number if you care to find these on the Magcraft website. And then these are their thinner counterparts. And again, with these, the thicker ones you get 100, and with the ones that are a little bit thinner you get 150. So you definitely get quite a few magnets. There's the dimensions and the part number for that one, if you care to have that information. And what I'll use these for is actually when I'm magnetizing arms on the models rather than just the weapons in their hands. So for example, I'll show you my Grey Knight's Terminators that I have here. If you've watched my introduction video, you've seen these guys already. And I've pretty much magnetized all the parts on these guys. So this is my heavy weapon options. He has this side cannon attached right now, which I can easily pluck off and attach a silencer, take that off, or the, I think it's called an Inferno, whatever, I don't know, it's a flamethrower. So those are all options. That's the same, those little thinner magnets I used on here because, again, it's a little light part. I don't have to worry too much about the weight of the piece not sticking because the magnet's not strong enough. So I use the two thinner magnets that I just showed you. These do use a 1/8 inch drill bit once you actually drill your hole for your magnets to get them to fit into. I also use the thicker ones to attach the arms to the Terminators, and this is again so if I have, let's say, another heavy weapon guy, or I want to take away his heavy weapon, I can swap out the arm to a non-heavy weapon option. So I'll actually use the thicker magnets inside of the torso here and the shoulder. They work especially well on the Forge World models that are resin because it's solid all the way through. These plastic models are two halves that stick together rather than coming as one solid piece, so there is some air in there. If you're afraid you're going to go too far in, one thing you can do is you can take a little glob of green stuff and put it on the inside, and then once that dries and you go to drill your hole in there, it'll drill into the green stuff just like it would the plastic. You don't have to worry about going too far in, trying to put your magnet in there and have it actually fall inside the torso and rattle around inside. So you can definitely do that. You can use the thinner ones for this, but again, if you go to pick up your model and you're moving around, you have a possibility of it falling off just because of the weight of the arm and the weapon that's on there. And if I have the space in there for these, I actually use the thicker magnets inside the arms as well. Again, that way I know when I stick that arm on there, no matter what I do or how hard I sling it, that arm's not going to fall off. It doesn't even move. And then again, as I mentioned before, being able to, again, I can pose my model if I really want to. I mean, it seems like a lot of work just for that, but some people, take a lot of pride in their armies. They don't like the little static poses the models come in. I can make him look all heroic like he's hitting somebody with a sword or whatever you want to do. That's fine. But the other thing that you can definitely use the magnets for, if you see this model here holding his halberd, if I were to have glued this entire model as he was, it would be nearly impossible for me to paint this portion of the torso or the underside of his arm and his Stormbolter if I hadn't magnetized the model. All my Grey Knight's Terminators are magnetized to accommodate any type of weapon option that I choose for them. So this halberd actually comes off. I've used those thinner magnets that I just showed you with the 1/8 inch diameter on the hand there, and I actually have two of the tiny ones that I use for the weapons that I showed you a minute ago on my Flamer and my Meltagun for my Plague Marine. I have two of those little magnets because this is angled. And let's see if you can see in there. And then again, I've put the opposite polarity. I've got two smaller magnets inside of there for that portion of the hand that's holding it, excuse me. And so it fits on there perfectly and the magnets match up. So now that that's magnetized, I can take these arms off when I go to prime and paint my model. I can access every single area on this model, and then again, if I want to choose different weapon options when I'm playing, I have that ability at the same time. So there's definitely multiple purposes for doing this, and it makes your life a lot easier. It does kind of, it is possible to screw it up trying to magnetize it. So another trick that I'll explain to you, especially when you're trying to apply a magnet in such a small area. As you can see, the diameter of this magnet actually takes up pretty much the entire wrist. There's not a whole lot of room for error when you're actually drilling the hole and putting the magnet in there. If you're off center a little bit, you're going to screw the whole thing up. The magnet's not going to fit in there. It's basically going to fall out the side. It's going to be kind of hard to get it in there. So it does take a little bit of time and patience to get it. One thing that I usually do when I'm drilling the holes to go ahead and do this, so for example, when I put the holes in here or in the actual forearm of the model to hold the different weapons, I actually use the pinning drill. This is the basic drill bit that comes with it. This is the Citadel pinning drill. And I will find the center. Let me see, where does hand go? I'll find the center of the wrist that I'm going to be drilling into, and I'll put the drill bit exactly center. Because it's a lot smaller, you can see around it, you can get it lined up and pretty much eyeball the dead center portion of where you're going to be going, and actually start a small starter hole with this. Since I'm going to be drilling in with something bigger to apply the magnet anyway, this isn't going to matter. It's going to put a little dimple in there, or you can drill it even farther if you'd like, to have the center of the bigger drill bit you use to start, because I do use a big power drill when I actually put these holes in here. There's not a lot of room for precision when using that big drill, so having a starter hole made with this little tiny drill bit goes a long way in terms of setting myself up for success, because that's how I was able to get every single one of these guys' wrists on all of my Terminator models exactly dead center. So I mean, it takes a little bit to get it lined up. Make sure you get it right. Get your starter hole, drill your hole. You'll have to kind of eyeball the thickness as you get used to using the magnets, because again, I have the thinner and thicker ones. Sometimes it may not be thick or thin enough for the magnet. You may have gone too far in or not far enough. You can put the magnet on something such as, I use a metal file, and I'll actually put the magnet on the tip, and I'll kind of dip it into the hole to make sure it fits, and I'll realize, okay, that's not thick enough, I need to drill a little bit more plastic out. I'll take my power drill, go some more, and make sure it fits. Or if I've gone too far, usually what I'll do, I get these little spirally crumbles that come out when I'm using my drill. I'll actually break off a little piece of that, drop it in the hole before I put my glue, stick the magnet on there, and because it is kind of squishy, it'll smush down a little bit. I'll hold it, let the glue start to dry, and it'll hold in place, and it won't fall basically back inside that hole that's too big for it. So just another option you can do when trying to magnetize your models, and some purposes for that. Now, the bigger magnets that I've had the same tube. I definitely haven't used all these up yet because they're very large magnets. These are 1/2 inch diameter. I'll show you the dimensions for here. You only get 24 in a pack. They're 1/2 inch diameter. They're 0.063 inches thick, and there's the part number if you were interested. These are some basically big ass magnets is the best way to put it. I don't use these again for very much, especially not on the smaller models. I do use these for the larger models and vehicles. So for example, this is my defiler that I've magnetized. I tried to kind of magnetize them as much as possible, again, for purposes of gameplay, weapons destroyed, vehicle wrecked, all that stuff. So the first thing, the torso is actually magnetized to the legs with this magnet. These are very strong. One thing you have to be careful of with these magnets, especially because they are pretty powerful, they'll attract each other from quite a distance away, and if you let them jump out of your hand or fly across basically and smash into each other, they can't actually break, and I've had that happen with one set of these. They'll hit so hard, and because they are somewhat fragile, they'll actually shatter and break into a couple pieces, and then you're out 1 or 2 magnets. And these things, I mean, they can get pricey, but you know, if they come only in a pack of 24, you don't want to be wasting them, so you got to be kind of careful. So again, I use that to magnetize the torso and the legs, just so when it's wrecked I can have the little skeleton of legs sitting there and I know that he's busted up and broken. And then inside the torso here, what I've done is I've actually magnetized the arms. I just found some little pieces of plastic basically in there to hold the big circular magnet, and then put the one on the inside of the arm here. I don't typically have to use a drill bit, but again, it is a 1/2 inch diameter, so you'd use a 1/2 inch drill bit if you were going to be drilling a hole for this magnet to fit it where you were going to apply it. But typically when I use these, I don't have to drill a hole for them just because of the way that I'm using them. So that magnet fits on there perfectly. It holds the arm. That thing's definitely not going anywhere because those big magnets have a very strong pull. On this side, one of the things you can do as well, I have one of the large 1/2 inch magnets in here, and then I have two of the 1/8 inch magnets here. The 1/8 inch magnets will not stick dead center in the large magnet. It'll actually kind of push it away towards, kind of more towards the outside. So if you were going to do something like this, You would use 2 small ones. You kind of figure out where they're going to go. Actually, what I did for this is I took these 2 magnets and I stuck them on here and just put some super glue on the back of them where it would touch this, pressed it on there, and I let it sit for a little bit until it dried, and then when I plucked it off, the magnets were all set and ready to go for me. I didn't have to do too much measuring and figuring out where they were going to go and eyeballing it. So they go on there perfectly, they hold that arm where I need it to, and it just works out that way. So definitely some good uses for your magnets. I have the battle cannon actually magnetized on this guy as well. I just kind of cut off the little stumps that would fit inside the holes in there, and then I just put some magnets inside the holes. I had to drill out a little bit of, or cut away a little section here for them to actually slide in, and now I can remove that during the game to display that the battle cannon has been destroyed during play. So those are just some basic uses for magnets and kind of things that I've used them for, or other people kind of do with them. Definitely not the only uses there are, but they are the more common ones. Perhaps you'll come up with something else that'll benefit you. I'm sure there's other sizes and shapes of magnets out there that you can use for, again, different purposes than what I've showed here. If you do have any questions about maybe needing some help with your magnets, or a suggestion for sizes or something to use certain things to use to hold your certain or specific parts together, please feel free to ask. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, any constructive criticism regarding this video or the application of magnets to your army, please feel free to post a comment below. If you like this video, please like it, and please stay tuned for the next video where I'm going to cover using green stuff. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.